Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County. This is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow.
Well, good Monday morning. Glad to have you here join us with the 411 on leadership. And it is now November, and we're excited as we're full into fall. Hopefully, many of you didn't stay out too late, and you're starting off this Monday morning after Halloween with a good start kicking off. And for many of you, you're even looking at plans for the Christmas season. And this is a good time from the leadership perspective as you are doing a couple of things. Many of you are planning and looking at what does 2022 look like, and also looking at how can you bring your teams together to be more effective as you come up here on the end of the year and finish strong, whether it's sales, whether it's planning, team building, all those kind of things. So we're excited to continue on with our series. And today, Steve's not with us because he's off doing some other amazing leadership things. And we'll say a big shout out to Steve if you're listening with us today, because he usually does if he's not with us in studio. But today we have some amazing guests that I'm excited to have here. And Steve and I have the privilege of really talking to some amazing, interesting people over this last year as we've talked about different things in leadership in different aspects and covering different elements. And today we have the privilege of bringing in Lupe and Brian Colburn. And Brian, who is familiar with many of you on our show, but we've also had Lupe. And let me tell you a little bit about why we're excited to have Brian and Lupe with us today. So Lupe is a manager at a packing industry organization here locally, and her and Brian started a show called Sjogren Strong, and Lupe was diagnosed with Sjogren's in 2008, and I'll let them share a little bit with it about what does that mean, what does that involve, and how does that look. But also this year, because of their Sjogren Strong podcast, with the tagline that says, how to live an active and healthy life despite a diagnosis with Sjogren's, and the importance of living and fulfilling your life, even with dealing some of the challenges that many of you deal with on a daily basis, physically, emotionally, whatever it is, and still being a leader, still being able to flourish and be strong. And so today, I wanted to also acknowledge, because of their podcast, they got an award from the Sjogren's Foundation of America, the Sjogren's Awareness Award, and bringing positive light to those that are dealing with Sjogren's. And so we want to welcome this morning Lupe and Brian. So glad to have you guys here with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and man, it is exciting. And so Lupe is talk a little bit about, but it's for many of us, Sjogren's is brand new. And so what is that? You mind sharing a little bit about, what did that mean for you?
Sure. I was diagnosed in 2008, and before my diagnosis, I had no idea what it was, never heard of the name. Actually, when they told me what it was, what did I say? Am I going to die?
What is it? And am I going to die?
Those were the first words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But it's an autoimmune. It attacks your moisture-producing cells.
Okay.
And so dry mouth, dry eyes, dry everything, basically. But it's more than that. It causes joint pain, debilitating fatigue, brain fog.
And in severe cases, it gets into organ damage if untreated. So, and that's why, if I can jump in, that's one of the things. A general practitioner usually says, oh, you have this thing called Sjogren's, or we might think you have lupus. You need to go see an RA, a rheumatologist.
Okay.
And the time from that conversation to seeing that RA is weeks. And what do people do? They jump on Google. And what are the images that come up? The worst case scenario, which just puts people into this spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, like myself, I wasn't aware of it until talking with you guys and learning a little bit more. So with the diagnosis in 2008, but I'm guessing you had to live with it prior to that.
Oh, I think I've had that since I was a child.
Wow. Okay.
Just a pain that I didn't know where it was coming from. Nothing would get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor and they tell you, oh, it's growing pains, it'll go away on its own.
Yeah.
And it just never, ever did. And I went to the doctor one time and for my physical or whatever it was. And as she was walking out the door, I said, hey, by the way, I've had this leg pain. I said, the only way I could describe it is I feel it in my bones. And she's like, oh. So she wrote a little script for me to go to the lab, and that's how it was diagnosed. But, they told me it's your thyroid, you're anemic, all kinds of things, but they never even thought about looking into anything else. I would go to the dentist. Oh, you have cavities, dry mouth, but they never put it together because it's a syndrome. Dry eyes, you go to the eye doctor. Mouth issues, you go to the dentist. You go to different doctors for different things, and so nobody ever puts it together.
Wow. Well, and as we move forward on the 411 on leadership and talking about perseverance, because it was amazing in hearing your story how you were able to take a lot of these things, and as Brian, you shared earlier, the comments out there, we'll say prior to Sjogren Strong, was pretty negative. But you had a different perspective on that. Am I right?
Yes. So like Ryan said, what was the first thing I did? I took to the internet. I think Facebook maybe was brand new, but I went online. I found a few Facebook groups that I wanted to be part of. I asked to join, but there was a lot of negativity.
Okay.
Sjogren's has taken this from me. Sjogren's has taken that. It was very depressing to me, and so you don't know anything about the disease. People who have had it for a long time, if all they do is talk negatively about it, it was hard. It was hard. So fast forward a few years later, good thing I had a good support system here, but fast forward a few years later, and the term podcast, and I didn't know what it was until maybe a few years ago. I would hear people talk about it, but what is it? But I actually, I asked Brian, I said, hey, I want to do a podcast on Sjogren's.
Yeah.
And he was, yeah, let's do it.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, so we started the podcast, and we built an online community, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and it's all about positivity. And I'm just doing my part to shine a light on Sjogren's in a positive way.
And the important thing about doing that is, yes, you have this issue that you're dealing with, and if you focus on the negativity, you're just going to put yourself into this perpetual spiral down.
Yeah.
And we still hike, we still bike, we're still active, and we've just had to change the manner in which we do things. Yeah. We're the two on the trailhead at 4 a.m. jumping the fence because the park's not open, so we can get started before it gets too hot, because with the dryness, heat is a bad thing.
Yeah.
So we change these lifestyle issues. I mean, and diet plays a lot into it. Staying on your meds plays so much into it. But all these little pieces, if you put them together, you still can be active and have, as awesome of a life that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for those of you that are joining us this morning, I want to remind you that we're here at the 401 on Leadership podcast talking to Lupe and Brian Colburn, and we want this to be interactive. We want to hear from you if you've got questions or comments or thoughts based on what we're hearing from Brian and Lupe this morning. Thanks so much. We had a couple of you. A couple have shared how much that they appreciate your courage and willingness to share your story. And so what we really want to focus in on is that ability to overcome and to persevere. And again, if you're listening, make sure you like, subscribe, all those things that I forgot to say at the beginning of the show, because it is important to us and it really means a lot. And but that overcoming that idea is we're looking at success and failures and learnings over what we're doing and persevering what you've done. And you've taken this and not just seen it as, oh, this is debilitating. Oh, I can't do things. I'm successful in business. I'm successful in leadership and influencing people, and really taking it to the next level and not wallowing in the pain. And nobody here is diminishing the discomfort, the pain, the problems, but realizing that you still have to live life beyond that and to be able to go and to do things. And you guys have a family and you guys have active things that you're involved in. Talk to me a little bit. How was that transition? Because you saw so many negative things, and then stepping into the podcast and begin trying to speak to all those positive things that you're trying to do and accomplish. What was the reaction initially?
On the podcast?
Sure. Yeah.
It was actually very positive.
Okay.
I like, I'm very open on the podcast, and I'm myself, and people like that. And mostly everything is positive. Sometimes you get bad comments. I get rid of those right away.
Sure.
But
I'd like to speak to that. Us wanting to present the positivity with the podcast and the social platforms is, I think, one of the things we didn't do upfront because we wanted to grow. You get that one person who starts those little negative comments, and it's like you don't want to delete them and ban them because you want the engagement, but the core mission was positivity and activity, and making that decision of no, this person has to go was difficult up front. But because she, the hammer here, is really quick to delete comments, ban people, and we attribute it to cutting that cancer out. And I hate to throw a medical term in there, but they're going to diminish from that mission. So her acting on those more proactively has really helped flourish this group, and I think we've grown faster because of that.
There's something to be said about the way we approach things, right? We've always we hear from different leadership things, the way we think about a problem, like when we do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threat. The difference between an opportunity or a threat is our perspective, right? So you looked at it as an opportunity to overcome and to take things to another level, as opposed to the threat. Oh man, this is so bad. Life's terrible. I've got this condition. You were able to say, hey, that's just part of who I am. Let's keep going.
You kind of grieve the old you, right? That's what I did. I went through, I was depressed for a long time. But I had to get out of that funk. I'm like, I can do more than be depressed. That my Sjogren is not going to define who I am. So, I grieved the old me. And then one day I woke up and I said, I need to make some lifestyle changes.
Okay.
So, with the help of a really good rheumatologist, Dr. Reba, I always like giving him kudos. He basically brought me back to life. He taught me how to eat.
Okay.
What's good, what's bad, what causes inflammation, what's going to make you feel worse, cut this out.
Sure.
And I like sharing that with my followers. But yeah, just you have to move on from that. Just you got to do it.
One thing with the leadership that we kind of are amazed. We were at Costco of all places and bought a humidifier, and this thing was just spitting humidity. You can see it. It's wafting over us.
Remind us again, why is the humidifier important?
Because of the dryness, the dry eyes, the dry mouth. The more moisture there is in the air, the better she feels.
Okay.
And this thing was just so amazing. She did a little video and posted it on Insta. I don't know where she posted it.
Instagram is my favorite.
It's like the next day we're getting messages of people at Costco buying this humidifier because she said, and it was like, wow, it's people aren't just listening. It's not just numbers. These are real people we're affecting change with. And the gratitude that we've received is phenomenal. And I want you to share the story about the baby.
Oh my God, this one it made me cry. We did an episode with Brian's daughter. She's a nurse.
Okay.
She delivers babies. She's a baby nurse. This gal, she listened to the podcast, and she was recently diagnosed with Sjogren's, and she wanted to have a family, but she wasn't sure,
Right.
And because of the episode, she said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and have a baby. And she had a baby.
That's fantastic.
She sent us this heartfelt message. I'm researching online. I couldn't find information that gave me the courage to go forth and try to bring life into this world until that episode. And, we're not planning on having children. And it was something that people were asking for. So we did our research. We brought in an expert. We did this episode, and a few weeks after this heartfelt letter, we get pictures of this little baby that was brought into this world because of information that we shared. And I mean, it was heartwarming. I'm tearing up now thinking about it back then. That's awesome.
You know, it's not always easy. Having Sjogrens is very difficult.
Sure.
It's hard for people to understand because you can't see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard for people to understand what they can't see, but that message, I lost what I was going to say.
It's interesting. People don't think I'm a leader, but everybody is a leader. Somebody's always looking at you or looking to you.
Yeah.
And it's important how you carry yourself when you think nobody's watching. Or when we did this episode because people asked for it, did we ever think we were going to get this beautiful message and pictures of this newborn?
Yeah.
No. And it's just amazing how her courage, putting herself out there, has affected this change and affected my life. It's cool to see.
She said to me, I know that you think that what you do is thankless, but it's not. A lot of people are watching, a lot of people are listening, a lot of people don't engage. But I mean, if I could help at least one person, then it gives my life and my pain purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would expect that it goes beyond just Sjogren's, because what you're taking is specifically, you're dealing with Sjogren's, but other people have like rheumatoid arthritis, or you're dealing with other types of physical challenges and still trying to live life. And it can be frustrating. But it sounds like even as you lead and work, you're leading on a podcast, you've had to make decisions. You just have to plan and strategize a little bit more, but still extremely effective. So what does that look like for you, knowing that you got extra challenges? Do you have to plan ahead? Do you have to make certain accommodations and things to be able to keep doing the things that you want to do?
I have to plan ahead.
Okay.
Way ahead. If we want to hike, we have to do it in the morning. If I need to do,
I don't think it was the morning. I think it was almost midnight. What Brian said, you guys have to start overnight.
It all starts with that weather forecast. And I mean, I'll jump on Google Earth, and how many trees are there along this path? Are there places where we can seek some refuge from the sun to cool down and rehydrate? And I mean, planning has been a big deal. We did a whole episode on just planning an outdoor activity. Okay. And it all starts with that weather report. Yeah. You know, if it's cloudy and overcast, we're in, because that's going to keep that heat down.
If we have, I don't know, two things to do if we have, I don't know, a couple of things that we have to complete over the weekend or something, what's more important? What do I have to do? Because I know that my energy is going to leave me eventually, and I'm just going to be done for the day. So, that kind of stuff, prioritize. Yeah.
So planning out, being thoughtful as far as knowing what I need to do, planning ahead, and still being able to accomplish and do those things, just knowing that it's going to impact you differently.
Correct.
That's amazing. What would you say if somebody is listening today and they're in some leadership role somewhere? How can they work with and be accommodating to somebody that's maybe on their team? Because sometimes we don't always know. You said, like with Sjogren's, it's not visual. I can't always see it. What's a good way for them to be an ally, if we use those terms, with somebody who's dealing with other types of physical challenges?
A lot of times, I think people who are dealing with medical issues, or they don't want to tell, they don't want to voice it, right? But
is there fear that if I voice it, that I'll be looked at as less, or maybe not as? I
feel that I don't tell anybody that I have Sjogren. So for me to be out here and for me to have a podcast, right? But my personal circle, my friends, but very close friends and family, I don't really like talking about it, telling them, because it kind of becomes who you are.
Right.
Oh, are you okay? Poor Lupe and her Sjogren's. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but just.
I think that comes eventually, though, because in the beginning, we struggled with, I don't see anything wrong with you. You're just being lazy. And I can honestly say we've almost lost friends because of that. Because, I mean, if you're inviting us to a dinner party at 8 p.m., it ain't going to happen, no matter how cool it is, because of the energy expended throughout the day.
Is that just because Brian doesn't want to hang around people, or is that
he blames it on me.
So you guys, it's a way to look at it.
He blames it on me. No, but I think people in leadership roles, they should be more understanding.
Right.
You know, there's more than the physical. People are dealing with things you don't even know about. So just try to be accommodating and understanding.
And just observant, you know, if an employee is going to the car and taking a nap, it might not just because they're stayed up late playing Call of Duty or something. It could be a medical condition.
Right.
And I mean, the ADA stepped in and there's tons of accommodations that can be made, but people are fearful about asking for an accommodation in the workplace because of, you know, any repercussion that comes.
Right.
An employer doesn't have to accommodate.
Okay.
You know, it's just, hey, the doc said if I could have a flexible work schedule, so days I'm not 100%, I can go home early and or do some work from home. That means a world of difference to somebody struggling with these things.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting because I was recently looking at someone was on social media, and it was a young lady in a wheelchair, and she posted saying, I get a lot of comments that, wow, you're very pretty for a girl in a wheelchair, or, you know, you do a lot of adventure things for someone in a wheelchair. And like you said, it's like the fear that this is what defines me. Like, I'm more than just a person in a wheelchair or more than just a person dealing with other things. Why can't I just be a beautiful girl?
Yeah.
We met writing for Leukemia Lymphoma Society team in training, raising money for leukemia lymphoma research and all of that. And there was a girl that we trained with that was missing a leg.
Oh, yeah.
And on road bikes, you clip into the pedals. So you're attached to the bike.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is so you can push down and pull up and rest muscle groups for longer rides. And this young lady would smoke us going uphill, and she's got one leg. And we're like, all right, if she can do it, we can do it. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's people with these conditions. I mean, more and more with social media, you'll see people with amputations or medical disabilities in the gym crushing it.
Right.
And but you're absolutely right. People have this negative connotation when they're looking at somebody, and it's like our culture almost wants us to feel sorry for them.
Right.
And there's nothing to feel sorry about. Right. You know, we're doing the best we can with the cards we've been given.
I think of like the Bethany Hamilton, who's the surfer who had an arm bitten off by a shark, and yet still competes at a high level.
Yeah.
And still, you know, being able to just be a fantastic, active person. You know, in being active sports wise and those things. And so, how would a leader, and I'm asking this out, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, because like you said, there's a lot of times we don't want to volunteer stuff as an employee. I don't want to say, hey, you know, whatever it is, but to say, how could a leader look for ways in which they could be more mindful of people that are dealing with things in their office?
I think, in my opinion, it would be maybe that employee survey, because you can't really walk up to somebody and say, hey, what are your medical conditions?
Right.
You know,
I think there's an episode on The Office, though, where they have everybody write down what they want to be covered. Did you ever see that one?
I didn't, but that would, we need to see that. But you can do a survey. What would make this a more accommodating workplace for you?
Okay.
And then I think people might give a little bit without saying, I've got MS or I've got this issue. And, you know, do your best. It's really weird. When I grew up, you went to work, you did your job, and you went home. There was no complaining. There was no clocking in late from a break. You were there to get paid and work. And now it's, you know, does this company have a ping pong table and a swimming pool? Sweet, I'm in. You know, it's just this different world than we grew up in. I'll lump you in there.
Thanks. Did we grow up in the 20s?
but I mean, that simple survey could help open the door and make these accommodations without violating any privacy and without that employer or employee saying, I've got this wrong with me.
Right.
I think a lot of people are afraid to say anything, even on a survey, because somehow it gets out.
Yeah.
You know,
if it can be truly anonymous,
right?
You guarantee, you know, and advise your team. So this morning we're talking to Brian and Lupe Colburn, and they're the host of Sjogren Strong. And remind us the tagline again. I clicked off it.
Your podcast to live an active and healthy lifestyle despite a diagnosis of Sjogren's.
And I know we're talking about Lupe and living a successful and amazing life with Sjogren's, but it also, as we're talking about, how does that lend to persevering and overcoming? We've had a challenging year with 2020, 2021, and people are finding new ways to be successful. And we'll call it that, right? Because we're overcoming a lot of things, and people are, and I feel people are becoming more aware of those around them and the things that impact them. We've talked about things like diversity and inclusion, and this is one of those areas, saying, how do we as leaders, as team members, encourage and be supportive of those that are dealing with other challenges? And so we make sure in our last few minutes here, we want to make sure to hear from you if you got any questions or thoughts, and we'll make sure to give all the really hard ones and awkward ones to Brian, because he's good at that. But we want to hear from you, and I really appreciate you sharing that. So as leaders, one of those ways is to just ask, and do it in a non-confrontational way, whether it's a survey that we can send out to our team and say, what can we do as a team, as an organization, to make you more successful? And a lot of times we sit down in those one-on-one, you do your analysis or your yearly review, and your boss says, how can I make you more successful? And you're like a deer in the headlights, right? So priming the pump, doing some of those things as we as a leader, maybe not put them on the spot, maybe ask them ahead of time, give them some time to think about it and think through what are some things that could really help me, and go from there. So thanks again, Lupe, for sharing and being open. And we've got listeners who are saying, how much they appreciate that, because as you said, not everybody's willing to kind of put that out there.
Right.
What would you say is, for someone who is living with other challenges, what's something that they can do, or what's the most important thing as they try to take that journey to go from, like you said, where you were with the depression and dealing with some of those, to take that first step into, I can overcome, I can live a successful, healthy life with whatever diagnosis I've got? What would you say to them?
I would say, don't be so hard on yourself.
Okay.
Take it one day at a time. I heard something or read something somewhere, and it was something like, you don't need to feel good to get going. You need to get going to give yourself a chance at feeling good. It was something like that. So I try to live that.
And we've met and talked to people with their medical issues where walking around the block is all they can do. And if that's all you can do, do it. And if it's once a week, cool. Try to bump it to twice a week. Eventually, you'll be walking around that block 7 days a week. And then maybe it's the next block twice a week. And it's baby steps, but it all starts up here. You've got to, in the Marine Corps, we called it positive mental attitude, PMA. Yeah. And we're in control of how we feel. We're in control. John can spill coffee and I can choose to get angry, or I can go, is what it is, and move on. We're choosing how we feel and how we let things affect us. So try to find the positive in everything that you do. And yes, if walking around the block is all you can do, awesome. Maybe it's a little faster next day. Maybe it's the block and then around your living room twice, but you can add to it and stay positive. Yeah. Surround yourself with positive people.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lupe and Brian. Thank you. Brian hangs out here all the time, but we thanks for spending time with us today and sharing and really helping us to understand what it's like to persevere, to overcome, and to take what life throws at us and to still grow.
Make lemonade.
Yes, make some lemonade out of those lemons. So thanks again. And thank you for sharing this time with us on a Monday morning for the 401 on Leadership. Again, say hi to Steve out there, and you can always leave comments if you're listening, if you're watching this recording on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever it is. We do go back and check on those. And thanks again for being with us. You can visit ocdalecarnegie.com if you've got questions on leadership and how to take some of those next steps in your own personal development. And before we leave, tell us, how can somebody, if they're dealing with Sjogrens or they've got questions about those things, how can they get a hold of you or when the podcast? What are ways to contact you guys?
We are on
Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram.
Your favorite Instagram.
Yeah,
Her favorite.
Instagram.
What's
at
the
Sjogren Strong? Sjogrens. It's SJOGRENS Strong. So
You can find us at SjogrenStrong.com too. And we want to thank you and the Dale Carnegie team. We appreciate you having us on the show because it's weird how influencers aren't always looked at as leaders, but in reality, they are.
You are. You absolutely are. And we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And as you know, great leaders aren't always born that way. A lot of times, through perseverance, learning, and training, they become great leaders. Thanks again, and have a great week.